Welcome to another episode of Inspired People Impact Lives. I am your host, Josh Kosnick, Managing Partner at Northwestern Mutual. And today we have Ashley Powell with us. Ashley is a TEDx speaker, salary negotiation coach, which is awesome because I didn't know that existed before today, revenue consultant, and, quote, champion of moms, which I'm most excited to talk to you about. Because you got your boss mom sticker on your laptop in front of us today. So Ashley, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. So before we jump in, I always wanted you, from your own words, to tell the audience about yourself instead of me reading any long, boring bio.
Sure. So as it turns out, salary negotiation coaches do exist. You can be anything you want if you make up your own title. So there's that. I help women and people of color do better at a negotiating table to make more money either at the point of offer or to negotiate a salary or a raise. And I speak on that nationally, which I've been doing for years. And then as a revenue consultant, I help small businesses with founder-led sales efforts smooth the wild up and downs that happen when you have a lot of time to go out and get sales and then no time because you're doing the work, and then your sales plummet, and then you spend a lot of time doing sales, and then you say, oh no, I don't even know how I'm going to fulfill it all. And that sort of up and down and up and down. I help smooth in a way that feels really comfortable to entrepreneurs. And then I am a champion of moms. I speak about something I have termed executive motherhood, which is the idea that when you become a mom, you still want to push forward in your career. But the messaging that most moms get is to take a step back and make sure that you have plenty of work-life balance. You get lots of messaging around wellness. I think that all of that is great messaging, but we really don't deliver it to men. So unless we're going to tell men who are rising quickly in their careers that once they have a child, they need to make sure that they have all the balance that they need, it's not great messaging. So I speak to corporations about how to better support their high-performing women through motherhood.
So I want to go back to that statement real quick. So you're suggesting, because I just want for my own clarity, that unless we go back and tell men the same thing, which we don't think, you don't think is a good thing either, a good message at all for whether it's men or women, that they should take a step back or anything in that nature.
Yeah, I think what we really need is like tools to move forward. I mean, like a great example is everyone has a woman in their circle who worked really hard to get a master's degree or a doctorate, and then had kids, and it became really hard because childcare is expensive, and she has a husband who's really dedicated to his career, and so she sort of slowly becomes a trailing spouse, and then maybe she has a third kid, and it just becomes easier for her to stay home.
Yeah.
That's a pretty likely scenario, especially in Madison, frankly, where we have so many trailing spouses. But that's a woman who could be very, very valuable. That's someone who should be in our pipeline to hit the V-suite and the C-suite. And so when we look for female leaders and they're not there, this is what's happening to them. So the messaging that we need to give to someone like that is, this is going to be hard for a couple years. How can we still keep you in the game? How do we keep you moving forward? How do we keep you encouraged? It's what my TEDx talk was about how to push forward and help support women so that they, instead of saying, it's okay now to fall back and lean out, let's help you move forward.
And I think this probably goes without saying, but this is should she want to. These are for the women that really want that to go for that C-suite and are really capable of that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's start. I want to get back into that. Like I said, I was most excited to talk to you about that, but I want to really go into that TEDx piece you mentioned, because we know that that's going to be released soon. You said there's 12 weeks of scrubbing that they got to do to make sure that it's TEDx worthy, right?
Yep.
What's it like to be a TEDx speaker?
It's amazing. It was one of the most fun things that I have ever done. And it really, when I think of myself as a speaker, it certainly was the height of my speaking career. I mean, it just doesn't get better than a TEDx. And I have to tell you, I got up there, looked at this huge audience and all these lights with the red letters behind me, and completely blacked out. So when the tape comes out,
Then you'll be able to see how you actually did.
We will both be surprised by what's on there. And I have an idea that I got to everything. The whole thing is memorized. Then I have an idea that I got to everything I went up there to say. But it took some mental exercise of, okay, did I say that piece I came to say? Okay, I think I have a memory of saying that on stage. How about this next? Okay, I think that, but we'll see.
That's interesting. The only time I feel like I've had that experience is when I was hypnotized. and there were people in the high school crowd that were friends of mine that would come up and be like, oh, you were so funny when you did this. And then it came back to me memory-wise. But when I initially came out of it, I had no memory.
Oh, that's so interesting.
So that was how I was correlating to your, blacked out comment to, so you'll see how well you did. And then you'll probably remember it as you're watching that video.
Here's hoping.
So let's jump into negotiation a little bit.
Sure.
And then we'll hit up the more TEDx questions and finish it off with the executive motherhood stuff.
Perfect.
Sound good? All right. So explain why negotiating your salary is so important, especially for your first job. Let's talk about those students that might be listening to this that are graduating or have graduated, and why that is so important to start off on that foot.
Sure. So I've done the math on what it looks like if you negotiate a $5,000
$5K higher than your offer,
right? Than your offer, and it means that if you extrapolate what it might look like to put some percentage of that, the regular percentage of that in a 401k, you retire with I think it's $182,000 more than if you didn't negotiate. So that's not putting all $5,000 in a 401k. That's putting the 7%. And I calculated it at the time based on my own 401k. It was being really fair about it, but it is a huge amount of money. And then I think states are going towards not against acts that make it illegal to ask your salary history. Illinois just did that in November. But it really sets yourself up as having a lesser value in the market. At some point in your career, so much of your value comes from you saying what your value is. And if we're going to base that on a salary history, you're automatically devalued. Mm-hmm. So apples to apples, if I say which one of these is worth more, I will look at a price tag and believe it. So I think it has really long reach effects at the end of your career that are really troubling. I mean, $182,000 is the difference between generational wealth and not. And so when we don't negotiate on the first one, you're really not setting yourself up for success.
And did you just do a 3% bump of raise when you were doing that math?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Just making sure there. So you can compare and contrast the difference might be between women and men in that first negotiation?
I'm sorry, what was that
first experience between, since you're speaking and helping women and people of color getting better, is there a difference between women and men in that first experience?
Do you mean inherently?
Yeah, or systemically, I guess, if you've done that research.
Sure. Well, first of all, there's a lot of people will say that women don't ask. There are studies now that say that women do ask. We just don't get it. And one of the things that I say in, yes, it is an interesting statistic. And there are some really interesting things coming out, including there was one that rocked my world pretty recently. The Harvard Business Review came out and said that if you're looking at a candidate pool with 4 people and one is a woman, statistically, she has a 0% chance of getting hired.
Wow.
I know. It's very troubling. There have to be 2 women in the candidate pool, because if there's just one and 3 men, she sticks out as something different. And then there's an unconscious bias at work, of course, but the evaluators are really seeing her as something different and then evaluating the other 3 based on one another, not considering her
not part of the pool.
Yeah. So she has a 0% statistical likelihood of getting hired if she's the only woman. And then, like I said, there's evidence that we're asking and we're just not getting it. Women statistically are hired less, fired more, we're given less raises and promotions. And so I think one of the things that really sets me apart in what I do is that I right away acknowledge that it is different for men and women and white people and people of color. There are things that will absolutely work for you that will not work for me. You are a handsome, very confident man in a good-looking suit. You can burst into anywhere and say, here's what I want. And somebody says, okay, that sounds great. The exact same actions are seen as aggressive. And aggressive in particular, we know that when women are seen as aggressive, it's a bad thing. And when men are seen as aggressive, we're like, thank goodness he's arrived. And so the advice that I give is often, it is given with a lens of the same advice will not work for you. It has to feel really good. We keep saying to women and people of color, just ask louder or you're not asking. I think there's evidence to say that we are absolutely asking. We do need to ask differently. And so that's the kind of advice that I give.
So that's really interesting. Is there pockets of places where this doesn't exist? Like I'm thinking like, is Fortune 500 companies, is that more prevalent versus small startups? Or have you read any data on that?
Well, there are some companies like Salesforce, which is a huge software company that did a really, really good job of publishing their salary bands. They went through a very expensive effort to make, to literally eradicate the gender gap in their staff. And they did that very painfully. I mean, it really cost them a lot of money, and that's a good thing to do. I think if, on the other hand, we can't put all of that on businesses. You know, a well-run business has to, like it's a simple supply and demand, they have to be able to get resources, no matter what they are, at the least amount of money that they can and sell it for the most that they can. And unfortunately, when you add people to that equation, it can feel really ugly, but you know, the point is to stay in business. You have to get the best person for the least amount of money. And so if women and people of color aren't asking to make more money, it doesn't exactly fall on the employer as being at fault in this whole systemic thing. We do have to advocate for ourselves because businesses do have to stay in business. I think especially in tech, where I spend a lot of time, there's a lot of pressure on businesses to publish their salary bands, and I think that's great. I think it's a big expectation.
Yeah.
You also look at like education and nursing are female dominated fields.
Right.
And those are really interesting ones to look at because you would expect that the gender pay gap would be, you know, you have more women. So of course you would pay them fairly or evaluated based on their having more women. But in both education and nursing, men tend to rise quicker in the ranks. They do tend to make more statistically than women. Or when women and people of color flood an industry, the median income will go down.
Huh. Like, do you know an example? You don't necessarily have to call out a company, but maybe a genre.
Well, tech is a really good one. So it used to be women and people of color. And the parity for, or the opportunity for parity in female developers is actually going backwards. So there are less female developers than there were last year and less than there were the year before. And that's an industry one. So that when that got flooded by white men, all of a sudden this coding became really valued. And now we're trying to convince women and people of color that they have a place in tech. In
STEM, yeah. And actually, I think I saw this morning, USA Today published some big STEM award, and all 4 award winners were young women, which is really cool.
It is really cool.
So, and I just don't maybe I'm really insulated. And so first of all, in the advisory world, everyone, no matter of your color, gender, sexual preference, we're paid the same. Now on my staff, it's far female dominated. So I have, I believe, 20 women to 4 men. Is that right, Chad? Or thereabouts. So, and I'm not saying any of this to brag. I feel like I'm insulated a little bit and not knowing some of this other major stuff that's going on. And I hear it, but it just doesn't necessarily hit me as hard because I'm in a world where it's not as much of an issue. And me as a business owner sitting here going, I want the best person for the job, and I'm willing to pay what they're worth, regardless of color, sexual preference, gender. Like, I feel like there should be, again, not trying to brag, like I feel like as a business owner, that's just a no-brainer, right? And
Absolutely.
But yet we have these issues and statistics that tell us otherwise.
Well, I don't mean to be a giant bummer. I spend a lot of time in these statistics, and there is some fatigue that comes with it. I think there's great work being done by leaders now around addressing your unconscious bias and understanding that diversity is not about hiring for the sake of diversity.
Right.
It is about hiring the best person, but it can be about acknowledging that the best person doesn't think like you, and that's a great value to bring
diversity
to the table.
in thought is huge. I always want, and again, I'm not even a fan of this term, but a devil's advocate in the room, someone that just, if we got all gas pedal people, I need a couple brake people in the room to make sure that we're thinking about things from every angle. So whether you like the devil's advocate example or not, I'm not even a huge fan. I got to think of a better terminology for that. But anyhow, we'll call them brake pedal people to get us to think a little bit differently about the situation or problem that we're trying to tackle. So what are some common negative thoughts people have about negotiation? And what are some ways people should work to get over those thoughts?
One of my favorites that I also give my sales clients is, or my sales consulting clients, is that you sell like you buy. So, for example, I, like every other milk-fed Wisconsin woman, loves a deal. And so if you were to compliment my outfit, I would tell you which piece I got on sale and which was the biggest discount. And because I love a super coupon sale. That is not how I should sell. And part of it is being very aware that if I'm going to sell something really, really high end, namely my services, it should not be on super coupon discount. It's just, I'm not on super coupon discount. And I think immediately when we think of how we're going to best position something to sell it, we believe we're the buyer. We're not always the buyer. Mm-hmm. We really want, in this situation, we want our buyer to like things that are very high end. They'll pay for things that are worth it. They'll really see the value, and you get what you pay for. So that's who we really want to be selling to, not someone who's going to be incentivized by a super coupon deal. Especially when you consider that if there are if your buyer, so if your potential employer isn't completely educated on what they should be paying, you will devalue yourself. That is, they will think you are worth less because you charge less, especially as you get into the senior parts of your career. If you're really an expert, you're going to charge a lot of money.
Yeah, and we expect to pay for it.
Right.
So I completely agree. I often tell my new advisors, if you call me, if I was a prospect of yours and you called me for a coffee or a lunch meeting or something like that, and you didn't try and advance your agenda or try and sell me something, I'm going to leave that meeting going, I never want to talk to that person again because you just wasted an hour of my time.
Right.
Advance your agenda. Get me to say yes or no. Give me that opportunity, and then I'll have actually more respect for it. Give me the price that you're willing or that you think I should pay, and I will determine if that value is worth it or not. So
it's good advice. Yeah. I say advice that's like that a lot. Don't be scared of selling. I mean, what we're doing is really beautiful. What I do, helping small businesses be better at their sales, that creates a platform for you to make all your dreams come true. If you are an entrepreneur and you have a dream to have all of the women in the world own your widget, you don't get there because you made no money. You got there because you hustled and you had the ability to sell, and now you have a staff and those people are able to provide for their families. I think it's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. So before someone takes a job or even goes for an interview, what do you think research-wise they should do to best put them in a position for salary negotiation?
Great question. The two things that in terms of research for what they can expect, my two favorites are something called ONET Online, and it's I think it's onetonline.org. And that is a governmental website that tries to bring all of the job descriptions, titles, and salaries together in one place in the United States. It is very dry. And then the other one that I really like is actually salary.com. It is the one that is least likely to sign you up for 1 million newsletters, and they really have a pretty accurate understanding of what the regional markets for certain positions will bear.
That's interesting. So they give you as good of estimate as possible. And then if let's say it's a range of 15 or 20,000, do you recommend they go right in the middle? Do you recommend they go towards the top? What do you think?
It sort of depends on where they are in their career. If they're real early and they're going for a reach position, they should go probably somewhere in the middle. And if they hit most of the requirements and really believe that they should nail it, they should be asking for more than the salary recommendation.
Yeah. Just a random thought there, because you mentioned earlier that Illinois is the state, when you do a lot of work in Chicago, that's mandating that they can't ask, is that right? Mm-hmm. The previous salary of an employer. But then you also stated that there's a lot of tech companies that are going to publish their ranges. Mm-hmm. Don't you think that's an unfair dichotomy? Where companies are forced to do it, but we can't ask?
Well, the companies are doing it voluntarily. I consulted with a group at UW when I was one of the primary organizers of the Madison Women in Tech. And one of the schools at UW asked me to come in and help them understand why they didn't get any female candidates. And part of it was that their job description automatically filled in the minimum. And whatever the minimum salary was so off what they should have been able to expect that inevitably women, that is a ridiculous thing to say. I mean, you just can't get really senior level devs for $46,000 a year. Right? There's just, they were expecting 90. The only number you put is at minimum it pays 46. Well, it's so far off. And I pointed it out right away, and they said, well, we don't ever expect to pay 46. That's the minimum we're required to put it on. We absolutely expect to pay in the 90s or more for this position. So I think, there's definitely going to be some back and forth. And this is all space we're not used to navigating. Yeah. And we weren't that great at navigating before.
Yeah. And I guess it goes to hiring practices as well, because we have candidates meet with at least 3 individuals. Uh-huh. Because I think you can fool anyone in one person in an interview.
Sure.
And your resume can fool one person. Hopefully fooling 3 people doesn't get to that point. But I think that's where a lot of people have to do work, is if they can't fish as to what the previous salary was, and they're trying to determine, the range that they put them in. If they have that best practice of 58,000 to 68,000, whatever that range is, mm-hmm. They're going to have to do a lot more due diligence, or maybe call in references even further to figure out if this person's worth $5,000 more or $5,000 less. So it was just interesting. That thought popped into my head. I was like, wait a minute. California, Salesforce, stuff like that, they're putting it out there. And Northwestern does those for us as well as we evaluate each position. And they do it regionally so that we can best make sure that we're in those practices, seeing if we're on the low side, high side, or right in the middle. But if states are now passing that they can't dig in on people's past, people can fluff interviews pretty quickly.
Absolutely. But isn't that what people have probably been doing anyway?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I always refer to interviews kind of like first dates.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you get the SportsCenter top 10. You don't get the bottom 10 until at least the third, fourth, fifth date. You don't figure out what this person's shit is until a little further down the road. You just get the high-level good stuff.
Absolutely.
So that's what I was going into. Like, you have to revise some hiring practices a little bit probably. Anything else on the negotiation side? How about negotiating a raise?
I think negotiating a raise is a really wonderful opportunity to build trust with an employer. What I've seen over and over and over again is that people are upset because they aren't paid what they believe they should be paid, and they always assume that their employer is very well aware of that fact. But I am here to tell you that if you have not made your manager aware that you are not happy with that, they do not know. And I, in the talk that I give on salary negotiation, I often talk about 2 employees I had. And I had, at the time, I had a team of, let's say, 10. One I really didn't like very much. He was forever coming into my office and telling me how great he was. I disagreed. And how much I was underpaying him. And he had all of the statistics that I didn't think were... He had all of the statistics that I didn't think were exactly accurate. And he would tell me what I needed to do to keep him. At the same time, I had someone else that I really liked who was a solid performer on my team. And every time I needed some numbers to hit our goal, he was always the one who provided the numbers. He was a solid person. I liked him as a human. And he, every time we had a meeting, would tell me how much I was underpaying him. So I had 8 other people on the team. I only had so much money to give to raises.
Yeah.
Who do you think I gave the raise to?
Not the person that was complaining.
Absolutely both people that were complaining. Both of them, because they were the
only
both.
ones.
I did both. I couldn't
Because
lose
they were
them.
complaining, yeah.
It didn't at that point it didn't matter if I liked them or not. They were the only ones who told me I was underpaying them. They took notice, and here's what I needed to do to keep them. So we always assume that like our boss knows something that there's no way for them to know unless we have an open conversation.
Right. Do you do how about reviews? And how do you coach people when they're say, okay, we're going into a review, and it's not, say, a mid-year, hey, I got this bug that I really want to raise. It's actually a scheduled review, and the company's used to giving the average 3%, but this person wants more. How do you coach them into positioning that review as a positive for them to position themselves for a larger increase than that?
That's a great question. Usually what I recommend is that you start talking about it far before the review. Many times, especially in a larger corporation, by the time you get to that review, your manager is presenting you with the raise, not asking you how you feel about that raise. So they've already done the work with HR to get approval. They've already submitted their comments on your review and justified a raise or not. And so if you're going to beat that time frame, you have to do it much earlier, so before they go to HR submitting all of the numbers.
That's really good. So what should someone actually say when negotiating a raise versus what not to say? I'm sure we could spend a lot of time on what not to say, but hopefully people are pretty aware of that.
Sure.
So what should they actually say?
So I like to come in really, really collaboratively, and I coach people one-on-one on this all the time. But one of the things that really works is to be very collaborative. You're both humans. In no circumstances am I ever going to coach someone to say, here's what I should be making. I'm going to walk. I also don't coach people to come in with an offer saying, well, I could go elsewhere. Here's what they're offering me. I think that's a really crappy thing to do, and I would never recommend that you do that. But it does work really, it works really well to be collaborative and say something like, hey Josh, I have really loved working for you. I'm so proud of the work we have done this year, in particular projects A, B, and C. And as I'm looking at where I want to go in the future, I really want to make sure that the Kosnick Group is the place that will keep me in the long term. And, I've done a lot of thinking, and I think a raise that acknowledges how hard I work and how good my work is too would be really helpful at that. So I've been thinking that that's probably an 8% raise.
As a boss, that felt really good to me. Versus the first 2 examples you gave me, you're really giving me an ultimatum.
Absolutely.
And in an ultimatum, I'll tell you, as a type A personality, I'm going to tell you to go.
Right.
Like, okay.
As you should, because what we've seen is that even in that situation, if someone, first of all, I get a little angry about this. If you come in with an offer to me and say, here, I have an offer, I'm going to think back to all the times you had a doctor's appointment and know that you were lying to me, and all the times that you made up something. So now you're a liar, right? Now you're a liar. And instead of having just a conversation with me, you went out and explored other options. I would have just given you a raise. If you were unhappy, we could have done something about that. But now you've broken my trust, and yeah, you should probably
loyalty's
take that
in question,
right?
And yeah, all those things. So that's really good, especially for young professionals out there that haven't probably gone through some of these mistakes yet, because I think that a lot of us have. I told you why I left Best Buy. They told me no, but I had this. So what I did, and I can't remember the exact conversation, but I knew other sales managers in my district getting paid more than I was just because they were older, and I was whooping their butts month in and month out. And I asked for my store manager for a raise, and she gave me some excuse like, "Oh, district only has so much allotment, and I can only do so much, and keep doing a good job, and it'll be there for you." I was like, "No, that doesn't work for me," and so I chose to leave. But the biggest thing there, as I remember back, was like I just didn't feel appreciated.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a spot that I was like, "I love this place so much, I'm willing to just suck it up for the next few years or whatever."
Well, you gave them the opportunity to keep you, which is pretty important. You were really fair. This is what I think I deserve. They had an opportunity to say yes or no. And then you walked out of there. No, I mean, you don't have regrets.
No. Like I said, I landed here, and I'm still sitting here today.
Yeah.
So, and it's worked out well. And but it taught me what I didn't want in life, is to not be under someone's thumb, and not be in control of my own income. And so I never look back on that as a bad experience. I just look at it, especially every Black Friday, as to why the hell I don't do that anymore. So let's anything else on negotiations we should talk about?
I often give the advice that you shouldn't ever state a range. So if I want to make $92,000 and you ask me how much I want to make, I will not tell you somewhere between 80 and 92,000 because you have just heard that I'll accept 80. And anyway, I didn't mean 80. I meant 80 plus. I work from home with all the flexibility in the world. Once a year, I get to go on the big sales trip, and you have Cadillac insurance, health insurance.
Yeah.
Maybe you provide a company Cadillac too. That's under those circumstances, I would accept 80.
Yeah.
But when you state a range, you're automatically telling someone what the bottom is that you'll accept. And so a responsible employer would not offer more than that.
Right.
So I'm well known for saying you need to pick a number. It should be high. It should make you want to barf in your purse. And once you have that number, then just say it and stay silent.
Yeah, let me, the boss, decide if that's a number that I'm happy with or not.
And you know what? Not everyone has to agree that you're worth $92,000 a year. You just need one person.
You need one person. That's right. Yeah. No, I agree with that. And the worst they can say is no and counter offer, and then you get to decide if that's something that you can live
Absolutely.
with.
But I think too, we get so worried that we get countered with a low offer, and we think that we have to make it work. We don't have to make it work. It doesn't have to work. If you wanted me to work for less than I felt was fair, I shouldn't work for you. That's fine.
Right. It's interesting. I'm sitting there going like, I don't know how other business owners look at this, but I'm like, if someone was possibly going to leave me, or I was going to lose, or possibly, let's say it's a new hire, and I really wanted this person, over $4,000, like I've already equated it into my head. That's less than $400 a month, and I'm not going to lose this person for that. So, but that $4,000 to that person could be huge.
Oh, it's all the money in the world,
right?
And it's such a vote of confidence.
Right. So I just wanted to, for those that are asking for raises, stuff like that's how us business owners think. I've already calculated in my head that $4,000 is less than $400 a month to me. I want you, so I'm good. And then, like you said, you're going to feel good about that. Mm-hmm. So it was just something that was going through my head there. I was like, I don't know if people necessarily know how business owners think about those or that math or the income, because from an employee standpoint, that 4,000, like you said, could mean everything. So it could mean daycare, could mean, whatever it might be, college tuition. So not just 4,000 for college tuition, we know that, but in addition to some of the college tuition. So anything before we move off negotiations on women and people of color, since you're so passionate about that topic, is there anything that we missed there that you want to make sure that we cover?
Not that I can think of.
Perfect. All right, so we talked a little bit before on your TEDx experience. Why did you initially want to do the TEDx? Or were you approached? Did you approach them? How did that come about?
It's a great question, because I get asked it all the time. It was given to me as a goal that I thought at the time was ridiculous. I used to work for a visionary CEO at Table XI who was really good about pushing people forward in ways that were just incredible for my career, for the careers of everyone around me. And that became a goal that was part of like my employment plan, among many others. And the way that things worked there is that you wrote your goals on a gigantic Post-it note, and you put it around the office. And every time someone came to visit me at the office, which was quite frequent, I would take them on a tour and say, well, here's all the things that are interesting about Table XI, including this way we do goal setting. Here's my goal setting giant Post-it note. You can see I have it as a goal to give a TEDx talk. And I said this, if I said it 400 times, I might be underestimating it, but I don't want my numbers to sound inflated. But I told literally everyone who came to visit me at the office that giving a TEDx talk in 2019 was a goal of mine. So that meant I kind of had to do it, actually. And you
put it out into the universe, and you let a lot of people know about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the hard part. I'm already a speaker, so I already knew what I was going to talk about. I had a concept. And if you've ever been to a TEDx, like, they're incredible, and there are some incredible speakers. There are also some people that frankly make you say, well, I could do that. Why am I not up there? If I'm a professional speaker, why am I not up there too? So I took that as a great challenge. And the trick, if you are already a speaker, the real trick to giving a TEDx is that the applications are not so easy to find. There's not really, or at least not that I know of, there is not a database that says, here are all the TEDx's with open applications. Then they're all run independently, so they're done a little differently. Some of them never get open to the public and are only curated talks. Some are only open to the people in the community.
Meaning like location as to where they're going to be. Yeah.
So you sort of have to keep your eyes very, very open. At this point, I keep a list of the friends of mine who are interested in giving a TEDx talk. And when I hear about an opening, I'll send it to everyone who's on this list. And if any of your listeners are interested in being on this list, it's pretty easy. You could find it if you reach out to me on LinkedIn or by email. I'd be happy to share it. And so I started applying. I applied to everything that I could drive to. So I applied to TEDx Chicago, TEDx Davenport, and eventually someone came into my office and said, I gave a TEDx talk, and it was really, really good for my career. And the way that our TEDx works is that you can nominate someone, and I think the application is open, and I would be happy to nominate you. And I said, that would be incredible. She said, let me look. So she looked. And she said, the application is open, but it closes today. Can you get it in? And I said, well, yeah, of course, because I had everything all ready to go. I was already actively in application and submission mode. So she sent me the link. I took an hour, submitted all my stuff. I made a new video for them. And that was who called me back. It was TEDx Normal in Normal, Illinois.
Bloomington Normal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anything but normal.
Is that their slogan now?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Or at least I think that was the slogan of the TEDx. It's a lovely, lovely group of people.
I haven't been there in a long time. So I grew up in Central Illinois before moving to Madison in Peoria.
Amazing.
So not too far from Bloomington. So any tips you have for those in the audience that might be looking to do a TEDx, besides get on your LinkedIn or email so that you know when they're coming up?
Yeah. Well, it's really a numbers game, like anything else that I do. You have to sort of be doggedly persistent. There's some trick to getting a topic that you're really happy with. But once you have something that really the world needs to know about and doesn't, they have coaches that will help you. And I found my coach, Dr. Kate Brown, to be very, very insightful. I was really impressed at the whole process. And something I'm not sure everyone knows about TEDx's, and I'm not sure it's true of every TEDx, but one of the things they said to the audience was the speakers may stop and restart. They don't like something, they might repeat themselves. So just be prepared for that, because your video is, knock on wood, mine's not quite out yet, but your video is supposed to be flawless, while the actual performance might not have been.
I did not know that, so that's news to me. And would you say that the hardest part, especially for maybe being a public speaker, is condensing all the knowledge and the talks that you do down to that, 10 to 15 minute time frame, right?
Yeah, they wanted me to be they wanted everyone to be under 12 minutes, not just me. I was not trying to deliver all of my knowledge. I wasn't speaking on salary negotiation. My standard salary negotiation talk is 45 minutes. I was trying to deliver a concept and talk about the group of executive moms, the Bossy, that I built here in Madison and Chicago, and why that got such quick traction and why it was so needed. And really it was around the messaging and the content that we deliver to working moms. So it was a pretty narrow topic for me, who can talk for days about all sorts of things. I wasn't trying to give my life story. I wasn't trying to convince anyone that their entire career needed to be changed. I just wanted to talk about this group and why it was so needed.
Awesome transition, Ashley. Let's talk about that. Let's talk
You're
about
welcome.
executive motherhood. Tell us about that work. In summation, and also, obviously everyone, we're going to encourage to watch the TEDx on it, but where did that passion start from you? So for those that don't know, we didn't talk about it in bio, but Ashley's the mother of a 7-year-old boy, 4-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm sure there's some passion that started with that, but may have started before. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I became very aware I was a senior level manager in a pretty big consulting firm. It was a $2 billion company. And once I became became a mom and had kids, it stopped being so cute that I wanted to work as hard as I did. And it started being harder and harder. And I had really been on a fast, upwardly mobile trajectory. And then I had kids and I started getting some odd messaging. And that messaging sounded like, your life will be easier if you don't push for a promotion. Just try to maintain your current position until your youngest is in kindergarten. So I have 2 kids. That woman wanted me to let my career stagnate for 8 years.
Wow.
We would never give a man that advice. And it's really damaging for someone who feels like I want to take on the world. Now this is really hard. And I at the time didn't know it was bad advice. Now, of course, I know that it's bad advice. We are forever talking to women about work-life balance. And I think that that's great messaging. We don't deliver that to men. And instead, what we're delivering is this really subtle messaging about relax, don't try too hard. And we turn around and tell men, like, get up there, go do the thing. Let's make a huge income for our families. And that means that we're missing out on women who could be pushed in the same ways and want to drive forward and be breadwinners. And for corporations, that means that's what's happening to our pipeline of female executives.
So, not that this makes it better or right, But do you think that there's more women telling women that, or men telling women, pushing those narratives?
I don't think I know the answer to that.
Because for you as a woman, and that's what kind of spurred the question, and again, it doesn't make it right either way. It's a dumb narrative, like you said, but it is a narrative that exists. It just popped to mind. So I don't know if there's any statistics on that, but I think that bottom line is you got to be encouraging of all people, and especially your talented people.
Absolutely. And it's so much more than just a boss being encouraging of a woman. It is also the ways that she is able to navigate her life at home. I am very public about the fact that when my husband started staying home, my career really took off, because that meant I could take challenging assignments. It meant that I could travel a lot. And it meant that I was never, ever called out of a meeting for a sick kiddo.
Did he face any shaming for staying at home from other men?
Not actively. I think there's
I knew
a
some
lot.
other men that chose that path and are kind of shamed for it.
Yeah, I'm sure that my husband is also like he looks like a football player. Like he's a big guy and he's really gruff. And so I don't think many people would say anything to his face. I think that's probably helpful.
So that might be a key advantage of his, but yeah.
He does get a lot of messaging. Like he takes our kids to a playground every day when the weather is nice enough. And the moms and the grandmas that fawn over him. What an amazing dad. Here you are with your kiddos. Mm-hmm. And I mean, he's aware of all this because he lives with me, but they're there too with their kiddos, being an awesome parent. And somehow it's worth pointing out when it's him, but not when it's all of the other women on the playground. Yeah.
No, that's really interesting and good points. So what do you think that women in the workplace, particularly moms, where can they benefit the most? Whether it's groups like you've created, or where are their advocates best found, I would say. Because I feel like even my wife, who currently stays at home, but probably will go back. I mean, like I said, we had 4 young ones, and that was a choice that we collectively made, because she's way smarter than me and probably way more talented in different areas as well. But I think that there's some pressures either way, and I've seen even from friend groups, whether they hang out with mostly moms that are also stay-at-home, or if they have other friends that potentially chose the opposite path like you did and became a boss mom. Where can they find their advocates? Where can they find their people that really push them if they want to go that route of getting back into the workforce or excelling in the workforce through having children?
Great question. And I'm so excited that you are passionate about helping your female workforce be really impactful in this area. The groups that I have formed are largely woman-centric. So that being the Bossy, which is now more than 600 women in Madison. I just launched a chapter of something called the Dames, which is a national organization focused on very, very high-performing women. And I think that creates a really safe space to discuss, hey, I got some bad advice. Hey, this really stinks. Hey, it's lonely at the top. All of that is really great. And when I explain what I'm doing to other women, most often the response that I get is, thank goodness. I'm so glad to have someone finally doing this real talk, because when I'm around other women where it's a mix of people that work and don't work or work part-time, there are very few people who are really pushing forward hard in their careers the way that I am. And so there's a lot of there tends to be a lot of apologizing, or a lot of not really understanding why I travel or why I do what I do. And I could never stay home. I look at what my husband does every day, and I every day think, wow, that job is hard. I'm sure you do the same.
Every time I'm left home alone, I'm like, I don't know how she does it.
It's hard, right? Yeah. So I think that there's a lot of value in these sorts of female-led spaces that I've tried to carve out in particular, but it's an ecosystem. And really, it won't come from women identifying that there's a problem, identifying what the solution should be, and then being the solution. That's not a tenable solution to the gender gap. It is really in men who take a look at their own unconscious bias, make a commitment to, in very active ways, like making sure they're mentoring women, making sure they're paying women fairly, and in what I think are less obvious ways, like taking parental leave. I think when we have men who take as much parental leave and at as high rates as women, everything will change.
Why do you key on that one so much?
I think it's because I know that it's an opportunity that exists that many men don't take. It feels frivolous, or they're made to feel like it's frivolous. But when men bond with their children, we know that it's better for families and it's better for men. And it sets up a pattern of, okay, if we have 2 working parents and kiddos that need to be cared for, 2 parents need to be handling cleaning, housework, figuring out doctor's appointments, figuring out after-school activities. That can't only fall onto the burden of women. And for so long, having it all has meant, well, you can have it all as long as you do all the stuff you were supposed to do at the beginning. And it's a new day. We expect men to do more now. Yeah. And by starting with parental leave, it really will start to set that up as an expectation. I have regularly thought that what my husband and I do, where I work really hard and he stays at home, is just a flip. There's nothing really revolutionary about that. It is even a little old school. We still have one parent who's the breadwinner and one parent who handles all the stuff at home. So does that really help women who want to work while their husband works? I don't know. When we have 2 parents that works, we need to really make sure that at home we're able to negotiate our needs there as well.
Yeah, at home. And then I think that also then having these conversations and this dialogue and this knowledge that you're sharing is then men can come to the table to their workplaces stating that they need these things just as much as women do.
Absolutely.
So it was interesting as you say this, I was like, oh, my brother just texted me, the one that doesn't work with me. He lives in California, is in tech sector, and his wife's a PA, and they just had their firstborn. She got 3 months off. And he just texted and said, hey, I actually got 6 months, and I'm going to start taking that as soon as she goes back to work.
That's amazing.
Right. It was awesome to hear that. And I also like that setup is because I've often advocated for men to take off, like not taking paternity leave right away at the same time necessarily, because being a father with newborns and now they're starting to grow up is like we lack the physical anatomy that the baby needs from month 0 to 3 or possibly a little bit longer. But bottom line is they become a little bit less attached to mom as they grow into that first year, and us dads can really help a lot more than those first couple months. Oh yeah,
and we need the help. I was most surprised when I had my second one that no one tells you that babies are easy. You know, you just set a baby down and then it stays there.
Yeah.
It's toddlers.
It's the toddlers that move around and run away from you and make a mess and
trying to stick their fingers in sockets the whole day.
Yeah, the whole 9 yards of that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And then people have asked me with 4 kids now. My wife gets shamed at the grocery where she's like, "There's like that's a lot of food." She's like, "Well, we got 4 kids." Like just snaps back at him like, "Oh, that's a lot. I'm sorry." Like makes these comments. She comes home and tells me this because it's starting to piss her off.
It would make me very angry too.
But got 2 adults, 4 kids. It's fine. Like it's normal. Like we're good.
Yeah.
Thanks for intruding my personal space though.
Look, you have such a happy, healthy lifestyle.
Yeah, we're good. Thanks.
People should be high-fiving her.
So right, but no, it's just interesting the comments people choose to make to everyone, right?
Oh, people are terrible. I mean, as a mom, you can't do anything right. You can't, if you decide not to breastfeed, that's like a whole thing. I mean, I won't go into all the stuff, but
well, especially here in Madison.
Yeah, Madison's a little tough.
But my and sister-in-law, not getting too personal, but she couldn't.
Right.
So there's women that couldn't, or like in our case, luckily my wife pumps, but like the babies wouldn't either latch on, or they, there were certain other, or mastitis kept happening, or like all these different women issues that I've now learned about as being a husband and father that I wouldn't have known of till we had kids. Like sometimes it's just not that simple.
But look at you, Josh. You are like brave and going in there. You don't flinch at all. You're like mastitis, boobs, breastfeeding. I love it.
Yeah. Who would have thought? My mom certainly not. But yeah, no, here I am. So yeah, I'm raising 3 daughters, like I said, trying to figure this all out and help them become strong, brave women, and
I love it.
Go from there. So like I said, anything on raising daughters now? Like I said, you're raising a daughter, I'm raising 3, and I know we got listeners that are raising daughters as well. What is your biggest advice to, let's say men first? What about dads? What about us dads? What is your biggest advice to raising daughters?
Oh my goodness. I feel personally very unprepared to answer this question because
well, I didn't prepare you before.
No, you didn't. But also my own daughter is giving me, she's decided not to wear pants. And I didn't think after winter break we were actually going to get her in pants ever again. It's just been like an ordeal. She's very strong-willed. It's just hard to raise strong-willed women, because all the things that make you a very successful person make you a hard child to raise. But with my daughter, I try to give her space to be whoever she wants to be and to listen to her body. And I give her lots of messaging around, it feels good for our body to move, and it feels good for my body to wear sweatpants. And so we talk about that a lot. In my house, I think we are more conscious of making sure that my son knows that he can do whatever he wants to do. As my daughter is absolutely surrounded by powerful women, and I want to make sure that my son knows that there is a career in finance out there waiting for him if he wants it.
Well, there's a career for your daughter too if she's that strong-willed in finance.
She already knows.
Yeah.
I'm sure she's already started booking clients.
All right, so let's forget that you're a mom then, because you're an awesome mom. So let's forget that you're raising a strong-willed daughter. If you're just giving advice to men about raising a daughter and doing the number one thing right to become a boss mom or whatever woman they want to be, what would you say? Because I don't want you to guilt yourself just because I have at least 2 of those strong-willed children in my household. So I know that we're always our toughest critic on ourselves as parents, because I think I fail every day as a dad. But what would you be your number one advice to dads raising girls?
My dad did a really good job. He was he had a big job by anybody's measure, and he took me to work a lot. I got to see he had an office not unlike this one, and I thought it was particularly outstanding because there were couches and a refrigerator that had Diet Coke and water, which was like the height of luxury, and an old Bloomberg, because it was a Bloomberg machine because it was 30 years ago. So I got to see what he did and where he worked. And as I got older, and I was having trouble traveling in particular, it was my dad who said, "You should not be guilty. I traveled all the time when you were a kid. You didn't think anything of it, and your children won't think anything of it now. Mm-hmm. This is what you do. You go out, you make a living. This is how you do it." And I think that was probably most impactful. That my father introduced me to very interesting people all the time meant that I knew in my career I could do whatever I wanted. And I grew up in downtown Chicago, where I was surrounded by people who did really bizarre things that made me know, well, the careers aren't just firefighter and police officer. I had a neighbor who had 900 numbers, and he had all of the 900 numbers that you would think of, and also a Spanish Santa line where you could call it and it would be a Spanish-speaking Santa. That's not even something that you would think of, and here this guy has made his living off of 900 numbers very proudly. I'm not sure that was like great for a child, but it did give me the,
Give you some perspective anyhow.
gave me some creativity in
And
career
there's probably
choice.
some millennials listening to this that have no idea what a 900 number is now, but
Well, don't tell them.
yeah. No, we'll let them figure that out. Just like a rotary phone or stick shift. So how about moms? Any advice to moms?
I think to make sure that the struggle is visible to your children. I know my husband and I, when we fight, we do it within earshot of the children. And it's really important for me that they hear him advocating for himself, me advocating for myself, and then to hear the arc of mom and dad are in an argument. There are ways that they are handling that, healthy or not. And then there are ways that they are getting over it and moving on. And I think it's really important for children to see and we don't need to hide how hard it is to work a full-time job, come home and make dinner, and then figure out laundry, and then figure out the next day's lunches.
And their homework. And
right. And
their
all
clothes,
the stuff.
laundry, and all that, yeah.
We've been suffering silently for a long time.
Yeah. No, that's really good. All right, so word game.
Okay.
Told you about ahead of time.
Yep.
Ready?
You did. I'm so ready.
All right, I can't wait. First word, diversity.
Inclusion.
Awesome. Confidence.
Reality.
Self-worth.
Money.
Motherhood.
Fun.
Relationships.
Love.
Legacy.
Money. I used that one already, so I can't. Statues.
Names on buildings. Statues.
Josh, you and I are going to have huge legacies. There are going to be statues of us like we're dictators.
That's right. And then they'll be torn down someday because of something I did.
But in a coup. It'll be great.
Right. Whatever. All right. Risk.
Flight.
Money.
Security.
Inspire or inspiration.
Innovation.
Impact.
Charity.
Nice. All right. So what keeps you up at night? Besides your 4 and 7-year-old. Because that's the excuse I would use. But as a business owner, what keeps you up at night?
You know, I think it's really tough because I don't sleep almost ever. I have a really hard time with it, either because I'm breathing into a paper bag because this whole thing may fall off the rails, and then because I'm so excited about what I get to do tomorrow and the opportunities. So those are sort of the two things that keep me up at night. Either, oh, we're all going to be homeless in a month, or we're going to live in a mansion in a month. It's hard to... these ebbs and flows are a little hard to smooth.
As a business owner as well, I get it. What's interesting about that, and we're about to ask you your favorite book, but have you read Mel Robbins' 5-Second Rule? Great book, great recommendation. But she talks about in there how scientists have shown that your internal body rhythm reaction, anxiety and excitement are the exact same rhythms that go through your brain and neurosystem. And it's your brain that tells you whether you're being anxious or excited about something.
Oh, that's fun. I like that a lot.
So she was using that with her, I don't remember, 7-year-old or whatever, that was anxious about a sleepover. But really, he was telling himself he was anxious, but he was actually excited. And so she started working with that because she had struggled with anxiety throughout her life and was trying to figure out this thing to help her kids.
Yeah.
So
I like it.
So it was interesting you brought up both dichotomies of that in the same instance. All right, so your favorite book of all time or one you most recently read that you'd like to shout out? Sure.
So I have a favorite book. It is the book that was written about my family. Jennifer Javornik, who's now a dear friend, wrote a children's book called She's a Technology Sales Executive and She's My Mom. And it is available on Amazon, and it is the cutest thing. She wrote it as part of a series to address the idea that if your mom is a firefighter, there are plenty, or a doctor, there are plenty of books that explain what your mom does, but not if your mom is a tech practitioner. And so it's really cute. It has my husband staying at home. It has me writing contracts and selling things. I sell apps to dinosaurs. And
cool.
it's really, really cute.
On stone tablets?
No, they're looking for a predictor, a meteor predictor, and it doesn't look good for them. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Good. Well, that's fun. I'll check that out as well. And where can our audience find you? What's the best
Sure,
place to follow?
I'm very active on LinkedIn. My name is Ashley Quinto Powell, and my website is ashleyquintopowell.com.
And when can we look for TEDx? Do you know? Did they give you an
It's
approximation?
like, I don't know, weeks maybe?
So by February, hopefully?
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely. Cross your fingers.
So keep checking YouTube TEDx app, which I have on my iPad as well, because that's where I looked for you today. But everybody take a look out there. Follow Ashley on LinkedIn since that's your predominant
Yep.
source. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me, Josh. This was a real pleasure.
Great conversation. Everybody, thanks for tuning in today, and we hope to hear and see from you next week. Please comment, like on my Instagram so we know what you're finding value in, and share this episode as much as possible because Ashley did awesome and gave us a lot of good takeaways.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great week.